Yeah, g'day. A few months ago, someone asked me if I could share some tips for new beginners to swag camping and solo swag camping, and also if I could share my scariest moment when I was out camping. So let's get into it. Yeah, so why go solo swag camping or solo camping in the first place? For everyone it's different. For me, it's about just getting out and shutting it off, shutting off work and resetting each time I come out as an opportunity to just reconnect with the world and forget about work for a bit. And it works a treat. I've been doing it for years and years and years. Everyone's different, but one thing that's certain for everybody, and this is a million papers about this, is getting out in nature is good for you. Fresh air, just seeing the greenery and the trees is it just does wonders for your for your well-being. So whatever your reason, the getting out in nature is just a bonus. But there's always some anxieties and some fears that creep in, especially first time you go camping, especially in a new place or first time you ever did it and all those sorts of things. And I guess my recommendation is to lean into those fears or those anxieties rather than fight them. And here's a few tips on how you can do that. Yeah, first tip. This isn't just for beginners, this is for everyone. Have a checklist. It might sound lame, but if it's good enough for airline pilots and it's good enough for surgeons, it's probably good enough for me. What a checklist does is it takes the brain work out and you don't forget anything. I'm not just talking about forgetting to bring gear along with you. It's the forgetting all of those other things. Forgetting to tell someone where you're going, or forgetting to check what the weather's going to do 2 days down the track, or just forgetting to charge all your bloody power banks or your phone or whatever it is. A checklist saves you all those hassles, and I've relied on one now for years. I've got probably 3 or 4 different ones for the different types of camps and hikes and things that I do, and I rarely ever forget anything. And if I do, it's because I've ticked something off thinking I've done it and I didn't actually check. So the other thing is, if you've got a checklist, you've got to also make sure you don't just assume things are in your ute when they're not, because I've done that before. But use a checklist. My next tip is to choose beginner-friendly campsites for the first time you go out. Established campsites are all over the place. Might cost you a few dollars to book them or whatever, but you've got certain facilities and you want to try to keep your eye out for things that might lower that anxiety down. Make sure there's toilets if you're a bit worried about not having a toilet. Cell or phone coverage. If you make sure you want to be connected as a backstop, make sure that there's going to be phone coverage where you're going. Access, make sure that the road, the car you've got, if you've only got a 2-wheel drive or a little tiny sports car, you don't want to be going somewhere where a 4-wheel drive is required. So have a look at all those sorts of things. Like I said, check the weather for the whole time you're out, not just when you're going and what it's going to be like on the first day, but sort of just check down the track. All of those things will give you confidence. It'll give you that sort of, yep, I can do this because 1,000 people have done it before me, before you start heading out into a remote site like I am at the moment. So I don't think there's enough campsites. I think there's always room for more, but you'll always find one if you look around, and there's plenty of national parks with campgrounds wherever you are, but also things like hip camps and things like that where you sort of Airbnb for camping. Lots of options, but it gives you that sort of level of comfort first time you go out. And probably the most important part about that is give yourself plenty of time, right? Time to set up your camp. You don't want to be rushed. You don't want to get out with 10 minutes of light and have to set up your camp for the first time. So give yourself twice as much time as you probably need, and it gives you more time to chill out. So good tips. Find a beginner-friendly campsite the first time you go out. Another big tip, set up your swag at home before you take it out. Even a couple of times, and even sleep in it. Just go out in the backyard if you've got one, and just set it up and sleep in it. Set it up exactly how you'll take it out. What that'll do is it'll mean you've checked to make sure you've got all the gear. Like every time you buy something, you can be assured something might come, it might be broken. You don't want to get out in the middle of nowhere and find you've got one of your poles missing or broken. So it gives you an opportunity to just check it all out, plus gives you a bit of practice to set it up. But it's more than that. It gives you a chance to set up your bed so you can put all your bedding inside, get it all ready, because the good thing about swags, of course, is once you've set it up, your sleeping system is all ready to go. If you're using a sleeping bag, make sure you know what the rating is for where you're going to go camping before you sort of set it up. So you can test all those sorts of things before you go out and get yourself into a pickle. So yeah, and a couple other things. Comfort is important. So test what you want to make it comfortable. Get a good pillow like I do. I couldn't stand having a shitty pillow. So make sure you get all the things you need. A tarp, esky, all of the things that will make it comfortable for you to go camping, and test it at home before you go out. But there's a golden rule here. Voltaire once, I think it was Voltaire, he said, don't let perfection be the enemy of the good. Just dive in, get it good and get it as good as you can, and dive in and test it, and then fix it up as you go with your next camp. Find all the bugs, and I'll talk a bit about that in a little minute. Yeah, and another thing that'll certainly lower the level of anxiety or fears you might have is preparing for your safety, making sure you've got you've given a bit of thought to keeping the camp and yourself safe. And there's a few things that you should take into consideration here. First of all is tell someone your plan. Tell more than one person. Tell them what you're doing. And it's not just a case of where you're going. You want to tell them a specific timeline. I plan to leave now. I plan to get there around this time. I'm going to do this, 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 and this. I plan to leave about that time, and I should be home around in this sort of window. Give them those sorts of levels of detail so they know when to expect you home. And if there's black spots, phone black spots, tell them, okay, yep, for 2 days I'm going to be offline. You won't be able to find me. Maybe take one of those little Apple AirTags or stuff that ping off a phone. They might be able to locate you with that. Those sorts of things will help. Just if you get into trouble, someone knows where you are and knows what your timeline is, so they can send help if you're not not back inside those timelines. Of course, your first couple of camps you'll be doing it in a fairly popular place where people will be. But if you do choose to go out somewhere and you've got those anxieties about being somewhere a bit more remote, make sure you've got a personal locator beacon. If you're going really remote, just make sure you've got all those sorts of things. All sorts of other things. Medication. If you've got specific things you need, make sure you take them with you. The last thing you want to do is get out and not have the things you need. I'm asthmatic, so I have like half a dozen asthma sprays in various places around me. I've got them in bags. I've got them in the ute. They just stay there the whole time. I throw one in the esky. Last thing I want to do is get out here and be struggling with breath. But just simple things like headache tablets, hay fever tablets, things like that. You're coming out to the bush. You don't know what you're gonna find when you get out here. So make sure you've got all those sorts of things. Keys, jackets, boots. When it goes dark, you don't want to be looking around for them in the dark. So make sure you've got a light. Make sure you've got a head torch or some sort of torch to illuminate things. Once things go dark out here, there's quite often little or no way of seeing things. If there's no moon, your cactus, it is black, and it is black, 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 and it's great. But if you're trying to find your keys, or you want to get up and go and you can't find some shoes, and you know that there's rocks and stuff everywhere, that's a problem. So make sure you've got a light, but also make sure you've got your keys and your phone and everything you're going to need. If you do need to get up, jackets to keep warm and that sort of stuff, get them in a spot where you can find and put your hand on them straight away. Glasses, another classic. I wear glasses, so I've got to make sure I can put my hands on those without having to think about it. Yeah, so there's some things you can think about before you sort of come out. So, put on your checklist. But also, once you get out here, there's a few things you need to sort of be aware of. It always pays to do a bit of a perimeter scan. So, what's around you and what's above you. Particularly here in Canberra or in Australia, eucalyptus gum trees drop branches all the time, and they can drop big branches at any time. Doesn't need to be windy. So, you don't want a big branch falling on you. So always look around to see if there's dead branches above you, but just also look, around. When it's dark, you don't want to be, you want to know which way to go in the dark. You don't want to have to get up and think, oh shit, can I go over that direction? And you need to go to the toilet or something. You don't want to walk over there and stumble over a big log or something that was on the ground that you didn't see. So do a bit of a scan in the day, before it gets dark, so you can understand where to go, where the exits are, how to get away, and all that sort of stuff. That will certainly help with your anxieties once it starts to get dark and you settle in. And the other thing is animals. Be prepared for animals. Snakes in particular are a big thing in this area. So you've got to make sure you've got snake bite gear. I've got compression bandages and ice packs and stuff in here in case a snake walks through and I tread on it and it bites me. I'm a long way from help here, so I need to be able to look after myself. So but also just things like bandages, band-aids, just simple things. If you cut yourself, I've cut myself plenty of times, or you stumble over a log or something and sprain your ankle. You need to have some gear to look after yourself a little bit. So make sure you bring all that sort of stuff, and also learn how to use it. If you've got time, everyone should learn first aid. I used to work for St John Ambulance, and super important that everyone learns first aid. Especially when you're by yourself, you need to be able to help yourself out. So a couple of things to do in preparation for your safety and the safety at camp. Very important stuff. I'm out in the Namadgi National Park, and you're not supposed to have fires, but someone has. So it's quite a handy little prop, but I won't be using the fire today. And that's what I want to talk about is, tips for beginners around cooking and campfires and all that sort of stuff. And probably the first tip for beginners is, just because you're camping doesn't mean you have to have a fire. You don't need to have a fire, especially in summer. You don't want to have to worry about, setting wind popping up and ash and sparks going off anywhere. But who wants to get hotter when you're already hot? So you don't need to have a fire. Don't think just because you're camping you've got to have a fire. When it comes to meals, I do a lot of my prep at home, so I can just bring it out and do as little of that here and have really good meals without having to fight around for all of the various bits and pieces to make sure you're putting together your dinner. If you do a lot of the work at home, it makes it a lot easier. It takes a lot of that stress out of what you're going to have for dinner, because you don't want to go hungry, and just because you can't get your fire going or something like that, and you needed it to cook. So do a lot of prep at home, especially on your first couple of camps, and it makes it makes a big difference to lowering your anxieties when you're out there. But if you are going to have a campfire, and they are bloody good, like especially when it's -5 and you're freezing cold, fire is bloody good. I'll give you that. A couple of things you need to be really aware of. Go onto onto the web, go to the government websites and check what the fire ratings are for the area. It's moderate here today, which is the lowest setting. It's pretty green, been a bit of rain, so it's not at all a fire danger, but it is summer and these trees will go up like a tinderbox if this fire got out of control. So I'm not even going to think about having a fire. I bring a little gas stove which I can put on my tarp, which is well away from any sort of things it can catch, and I use that only for making coffee and things like that. For dinner tonight I've got a salad which is leftover Chrissy dinner, and I'm just going to hoof into that, and I'll have a really good meal, and I won't have to cook. So a lot of things you've got to take care of or take into consideration when you do have a fire. And probably the most important thing for beginners, if you're not aware of it, is that concept of leave no trace. Someone balls that up here, is leave the place the way you found it. Make sure your fire is out, and that means dousing it with tons and tons of water. Don't just let it go out by itself. An amber can stay for hours and hours and hours, and a big gust of wind can come and it can land over there in those dry bushes, and boom, suddenly you've got a problem. So a lot of things you need to be aware of if you're going to have a fire. So don't bite off more than you can chew early on when you're camping. And my best tip would be go to a campsite where you're allowed to have fires. They have proper fire pits that are make it easier to contain the fires. But again, just do it as a last resort, and only if you're cold. If it's going to be hot, take something you can eat. Yeah, pretty good tip. Numbskulls. So what happens when you actually go to sleep or when it gets dark? A couple of things. There's all these noises, and they'll give you all sorts of anxieties. When you're camping, you're much closer to the trees. You're much closer to the ground. There's very little between you and the outside, just a thin bit of canvas. So things are so much louder. It doesn't mean they're scary. Best tip you can do is to normalize the noise. So first time you get to camp, when it's just like this, just sit and listen. You'll hear the trees creaking, you'll hear the wind brushing through these little shrubs and things like that, and get to know those sounds, because they're not in any way scary when it's light, but when it's dark, they sound a lot louder. It's only because you're closer to them than when you're in home and you're tucked up in bed. So yeah, be aware of that. It's a big sort of thing to sort of get your head around, or something you don't sort of notice or don't realise before you go out the first time when you go camping, that how loud nature actually is. So be aware of that and normalise it. Get to know the sounds of the camp you're in, and just what might be around. Animals make weird noise. Australia has the cutest, fluffiest, most gorgeous little animals, but none of them sound nice. Koalas scream and grunt. Kangaroos grunt. Possums. A little possum will make the most atrocious, loud, screaming grunt noise in the middle of the night, and they come right up to your camp. Like when you're lying in bed, you can have a possum 2 foot from you and it'll just scream. And you literally jump through the roof of the sea. But it's normal. It's good. It's why you come out. The animals are part of why you want to be out here. But just understand that they might look cute and fluffy, but they don't sound very nice. They're like cockatoos and all the normal animals in Australia, birds, kookaburras. They make a lot of noise, and it's very, very loud when you're in a tent and there's not much around you to protect you from the noise. Speak of the devil, the currawong's flying past. So yeah, get used to those sorts of things and just try and, make yourself comfortable with them when it's light, and then when it's dark, it'll be far less scary. And there's another thing too. A possum or a kangaroo boom, 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 past during the day, you kind of don't hear it. You're lying in swag and a kangaroo goes doom, 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 or a possum just walks. It sounds like there's a bloody monster standing outside. So even footprints sound loud in the dark. So just be aware of it, and don't stress by it. It's just normal. So get used to, just try and normalise it. A couple of tips though. Earplugs. I don't ever wear them. I did once. I tried it, only because I was in a camp where people were, but I couldn't stand it. There's no way in the world I could sleep with earplugs in. But I know a lot of people do, just because nature is so bloody loud. So get some earplugs. I like to leave the door open so I can sort of, if there is a noise outside, I'm saying, what the fuck's that? Oh, excuse me, what the hell's that? I can, just shine a torch out and just do a bit of a perimeter scan and just see if there's anything that's moving that I wasn't, that I'm not used to, because sometimes you even hear sounds that you're not used to. So I usually keep a torch nice and handy and keep my door open. But earplugs is probably the best thing for those who find the noise a bit too loud. So yeah, noises, they can be the biggest cause of anxiety, and I get it. Just try and lean into it rather than run away from it. Yeah, just like noises are louder when you're in the bush, temperatures are colder as well. Like when you're at home and it drops down to 2 or 3 degrees, your house wouldn't get below 15, 16, 17. So when you're in bed, a doona, you're comfy, it's nice and warm. When it gets to 2 or 3 degrees, when you're in the bush and you've only got a bit of canvas around you, you feel it. It's bloody cold. It's good, but it's bloody cold. So be aware of that. You might get used, like you live in an area where it gets to 5 degrees or something overnight every night, and you think that's not that cold. Well, it's a lot colder when you're in a swag. So what can you do? Like tips, best tip, layering. I always have layers. It's almost impossible to get warm at 4 o'clock in the morning when you're freezing cold, but it's certainly a lot easier to cool off if you're too hot. So a couple of layers. I always have a base layer on. Middle of winter, like I've been out in this thing, it's been -5, -6. It's thermals, it's tracksuit pants, hoodie, jumper, and even a jacket, big beanie. Layers to keep me nice and warm, and then I can just take them off if it doesn't drop as cold as I thought it was going to do, or if I just start to get warm. So layering, best tip for anyone new to camping who may not be aware of that concept, just make sure you wear lots and lots of layers. Wool is good, cotton is shit. Don't use cotton. I always use moisture wicking shirts, but wool, if you can get it, it keeps you warm even if it does get a bit sweaty or it gets wet. So you just use those layering techniques. It's always handy. But there's other things you can do. Like I've got a water bottle. Like I said, it gets cold here in Canberra. Getting some wind, just bear with me. Yeah, it gets bloody cold up here. This place in the middle of winter, right where I'm sitting, would be sitting in this much snow. So it gets cold. I have a water bottle, which I'll fill up, just before I go to bed with boiling water, and snuggle up with it. I also always carry some of those, and they're just here. Those instant heat warmer things. Just know how to use them. They need air around them, so crack them and get some air next to them. You can't sort of tuck them into your socks because they'll stop working, but just keep the air around them. They stay warm for a few hours. They're pretty handy. Just a big pair of fluffy socks. I always layer my feet as well. Cold feet are the worst thing when you're camping. Keep your feet warm, and you're generally pretty warm. And if you're a bald head like me, make sure you've got a beanie. Even if you're not, a beanie is very handy to sleep in. Keeps you nice and warm, because you don't want to put your head under a doona. So yeah, layers, keep yourself warm, and that will make your experience so much better. Last thing you want to do is have a shitty cold night and ruin it forever, because if you can stay warm, you'll enjoy yourself and you'll get up in the morning feeling refreshed because you've had a good night's sleep. So yeah, stay warm. Yeah, so they're the things you can do to plan, to keep anxiety down as best you can. But there's rewards as well for being a first-time camper. Is you'll get something I've only ever had once, but you still yet to have it. Is that first morning, waking up and watching the sunrise from a campsite. It's one of the best things you can experience. It's brilliant. Just lying in your swag, watching the day suddenly come to life is magnificent. I have a very, very simple morning routine. Like I said, I come out camping for a very specific reason. It's usually in the afternoon, and I come out to relax and just push pause for a little minute. My morning routine is very simple. Get up, I usually have an apple or a banana for breakfast, have a coffee, and then I pack up and head home. I'm really recharged by that stage. I've had a great night's sleep. I always sleep really well. But, it's always really important to plan the next day. It's not just about the camping, the night. It's about the next morning. So make sure you bring some breakfast. Make sure, your timeline is fine. You don't want to be rushed to pack up, because just like setting up, it may take a lot longer than you expect the first time. So give yourself plenty of time, and make sure you find your little groove and find your routine, which is what I've done, and you will learn to love swag camping as much as I do, and solo camping. Just being by myself. I love my family. I just love being out and doing things with my wife and my kids, but I also love being by myself and just out here with the birds out here with the kangaroos, and just chilling out and just turning it all off. It's part of how I keep going day to day, and I found that routine, and that's the thing you've still got to look forward to as someone new to camping, or swag camping in particular. But I did promise I'd tell about the scariest moments I've had, and I can talk about two. So let me get into them. Yeah, my scariest moments while camping. First one was when I was probably, 7 or 8, when I was with Cubs or Scouts or something. We're out camping. It was a group of us. There was a whole bunch of people, but I was camping in a tent. There was 4 of us in this, those old, I don't know if you've seen them, but those old canvas tents, square tents that had those wooden poles that gave everyone splinters, and big ass tent pegs that were impossible to drive in. We're sleeping in one of those. We were 7, 8, 9, and the story started. There was like, I can't remember what, I wish I could remember what we were talking about, but I swear to God, after about an hour of that, I was terrified. I was sure that we were going to get murdered in the middle of the night, and nothing at all could get that out of my head. I didn't sleep a wink. I don't even think it was the first time I'd gone camping with Scouts or Cubs or something like that. I think I'd been out before that, but for some reason it just got in my head. we're all the same, all four of us. We're all just up all night, terrified that we're going to meet our maker. But the sun rose and we got through it okay. We were just a bit knackered the next day, I guess. But yeah, that was probably the scariest moment I've ever had. As for now and recently, I've been camping my whole life, and that's not to say I'm fearless. It's just I've done a lot of camping, so I've sort of seen pretty much everything. So nothing surprises me much anymore when I'm out camping. But I do have a pact, or I do have an agreement or a deal with my wife, where, because I'm out by myself, and I'm a fair way away from the next person. The next person's probably miles away from me. So if something goes wrong, it's me and God only knows what. So I have a deal with my wife that if I ever feel unsettled or unnerved, or if there's any danger of any sort, it doesn't matter whether it's camping. Like if I'm hiking, I won't hike down a cliff or climb down a abseil, use a rope to go down a rock face or anything like that, unless there's someone with me. It's just about keeping my wife happy and keeping me happy as well. It's hard to sort of explain, but I don't tend to get fearful. But a couple of months ago, earlier this year, was the first time I packed up and gone home from camp because of something that unnerved me, and it was a bunch of wild dogs. A bit further, where are we? We're in Brindabella. So yeah, a bit further south than here, there's larger sort of open meadows. And I was camping and sitting in my swag, and these dogs were howling. They were sort of calling to each other from either side of me. And there's a lot of baits around at the moment. There's a lot of raised awareness of wild dogs. And I've never encountered wild dogs in my camp, so I wouldn't know what to do if they did come in. I don't know how vicious they are. I don't know whether they would come into camp and try and hunt down, scrounge around for food or anything like that. So I was a little bit unnerved, and so I packed up. It was about 8 o'clock or something at night. It was dark. It was close to winter by then, so it didn't have, it was middle of the night effectively, so it was pitch black. So I packed up, and luckily the car wasn't too far away, and I'd done all that planning stuff, so I knew exactly how to get out in the dark. I could pack up in the dark, and I got in my car, headed home, got home about 10 o'clock to see my wife, surprised to see me. And so I explained to her that, I saw some dogs or heard some dogs and thought best to come home. So a few brandy points that day. But yeah, they're probably the two things that spring to mind. But generally, I don't tend to get fearful. I don't get worried about things. Like any day, any time one of these trees can fall down, I don't worry about that stuff. I figure if you're going to go, that's probably a good way to go. No, that's a pretty stupid thing to say, but you know what I mean. I don't worry about that sort of stuff. I'm mindful of it, and I don't camp under dead branches, as I said. But at some point you've got to just accept some risk, and and I'm pretty comfortable and confident. I've been doing this for a long while now, so I get a good sense of when I'm safe. So that's my two stories of of being fearful or being scared when I'm out camping. So so that's it for this little video. I hope if you're thinking about going swag camping, this has given you some good tips and encourage you to do so. It's one of the best things I do. I've been doing it for years and years and years, like I said, and I just love it. So can't encourage you more. Get into it. Just dive in. Even like I said, just go and camp in your backyard, then go and camp at in a caravan park somewhere, and just set yourself up so you know how to do it a few times, and then just edge a little bit further and further away from home or from civilization, and until eventually you can just sort of come out here with not a worry in the world, sit here in the middle of the mountains. I'm right up the top of a mountain in the middle of nowhere up here, and I couldn't be happier. So thanks for joining me. Thanks for staying with me on this one. I hope you found some tips in it. And if you want to check any of my other videos, have a look at one of these. Until next time, stay safe.